These evil people have just got to be stopped.
Hey guys, my name's Jay, and welcome back to the Canadian Crypt. I know it's been a while since I put out a video on here, but I'm happy to say that I'm back and I'm ready to make new horror content for you guys, and what better way to get back into it than with a review of an underrated 80s heavy metal horror flick that seems to fly under the radar for a lot of people, and that film is Trick or Treat. A little backstory on how I first discovered this film. I believe it was back in 2016. I ended up finding this flea market kind of comic and toy fair type thing, and there was a guy there with this massive horror table full of Blu-rays, DVDs, NECA figures, posters, you name it. So I guess he noticed that I was wearing a Kiss shirt at the time, and the first thing he asked me was if I'd ever seen Trick or Treat. And of course, the first thing that came to mind was the horror anthology film Trick or Treat. So he ends up digging through this massive box of DVDs, and he pulls out this. And after hyping it up for what seemed like 15 minutes straight, I ended up buying it, and looking back, I'm really happy that I did because Trick or Treat is very much out of print, and I'm very happy to say that I have it as part of my collection. One thing I'd like to point out right off the bat is the fact that putting Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons on the cover of this film is super misleading because I believe Gene Simmons only has about 5 minutes of screen time in the entire movie, and Ozzy has a 30-second cameo at best. But hey, that's marketing for you, so without further ado, let's get into the review. Trick or Treat was directed by Charles Martin Smith and stars Mark Price, Tony Fields, and Gene Simmons. The film tells the story of a metalhead outcast named Eddie Weinbauer who goes by the nickname Ragman. Eddie is the victim of daily bullying at school, but finds comfort in heavy metal music, most notably from the musician Sammy Kerr, who he pretty much idolizes. Sadly, Sammy Kerr ends up dying in a tragic hotel fire, which leaves Eddie absolutely devastated. But things start to look up for Eddie when a local radio DJ played by Gene Simmons gives him the only vinyl pressing of Sammy Kerr's soon-to-be-released final album. And after playing the record backwards, he starts hearing subliminal messages and realizes he can communicate with Sammy Kerr from beyond the grave. He ends up using Sammy's paranormal powers to get back at his high school bullies and those who have wronged him. But it's all fun and games until things go a little too far and Sammy Kerr starts killing and threatening those who are close to Eddie. Now he's on a race against time to cast Sammy Kerr back to hell before he kills again. I fell in love with this film after the first watch, and it instantly became a staple in my Halloween season rotation. I've always felt like heavy metal and horror have always gone hand in hand, and when it comes to Trick or Treat, you're getting the best of both worlds. I will say that when I first went into this film, I was expecting something silly and cheesy along the lines of Rock and Roll Nightmare, and if you aren't familiar with Rock and Roll Nightmare, here's a little clip for context.
Prepare to die!
I knew if I pissed you off long enough, you'd make a personal appearance.
But I was actually surprised by the serious approach they took with it. Yes, it does have a few cheesy moments in it, but that's to be expected with a slasher film of its time, but you can really tell that they took their time when they made this one. I thought the film was actually well directed and well shot. It flowed smoothly, and I really enjoyed the story. It kept me engaged and entertained from beginning to end, and I'm happy to say they didn't rely super heavy on filler material. I thought Tony Fields gave a very menacing and effective performance in the role of Sammy Kerr, and I really liked the costume design and makeup for the character. I also thought Mark Price did a great job in the role of Eddie. I can kind of relate to the character. I was also that weird loner metalhead kid who kind of kept to himself in high school, and being a massive Kiss fan, it was a real treat to see Gene Simmons playing the radio DJ in the film. I actually didn't realize until recently, but Gene Simmons had a bit of an acting career back in the 80s besides the obvious Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park, which I'll actually be covering next week, so stay tuned for that. He also had roles in films such as 1984's Runaway and 1986's Never Too Young to Die. And while his role was pretty small in this film, I thought he gave a great performance. But Gene Simmons isn't the only rock star in the film. We also have a cameo from Ozzy Osbourne where he plays a crazy preacher, and if that isn't enough reason to watch the film, I don't know what is. Trick or Treat also has an awesome soundtrack from the band Fastway. If you're a fan of old 80s hair metal bands like Dokken, Rat, Motley Crue, old Motley Crue, I think you'll really get a kick out of the soundtrack. When it came to the death scenes, there were definitely a few fun moments in there, but it definitely left a little bit to be desired. A cool thing about the character of Sammy Kerr is the fact that he has the ability to pull people through TV screens. He ends up pulling this old religious protester through the TV screen, electrocuting her to the point where she's pretty much barbecue. I thought that was a really cool, creative, standout kill in the movie. While doing some research into this film, I found out something really cool about the director. This should be interesting to any of my fellow Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans out there, but Charles Martin Smith, the director of this film, actually directed Welcome to the Hellmouth, which was the first ever episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So to wrap things up, I think Trick or Treat is one of those hidden gems that really doesn't receive the recognition it deserves and is a must-watch for any fan of heavy metal music or horror. What are your thoughts on Trick or Treat? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Have you even seen it yet? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright guys, that'll be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit it with a like, and if you enjoy my content, why not consider subscribing? It really helps the channel out way more than you know, and it helps get more eyes on my videos. So with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Stay scary.